This is part 9 of the Russia-Ukraine war. In part 8, we covered the Holodomor and Hitler's invasion of Soviet territory. Now we move into post-war story of the Cossacks and life inside the Soviet system. Somewhere in the aftermath of that war, in 1945, a quieter and more complicated story unfolded along the edges of the conflict. One that captured the ambiguity of survival in a system like this. The Cossacks, who had long lived between powers and whose loyalties had shifted over time, found themselves on the losing side of history, many having aligned against the Soviets in hopes of preserving some measure of autonomy. As the war ended, groups of them surrendered to British forces, believing that surrender meant safety, that they had reached a point where the fighting was over for them. What followed was something else entirely. Under agreements made between the Allies, they were forcibly returned to the Soviet Union, handed back to a system that did not see their choices as complicated or contextual, but as betrayal. Some tried to hide who they were, to pass as something else, but it made little difference. Many were executed. Others were sent into the labor camp system, disappearing into a structure where the consequences of being on the wrong side were final. It is the kind of story that does not fit neatly into categories of right and wrong, but it reinforces something the system made clear. Survival meant choosing a side, and sometimes there was no safe choice. And yet, for all of this, life continued. Decades passed in which the Soviet Union functioned with a kind of stability that, for many, became normal. The state controlled the economy, assigned work, provided housing, education, and healthcare, creating a system where daily life was structured and, in some ways, predictable. People adapted to it, learned where the boundaries were, what could be said, what could not, and how to move within a framework that did not offer full freedom, but did offer consistency. For a generation that had lived through collapse and war, that consistency carried its own value, even if it came with limits. By the late 1980s, however, the surface stability began to crack. Follow along because in part 10, we go over how the Soviet system began to crack under Gorbachev.